Germany and Italy, Domestic and Foreign Policy by Evan Campbell and Peyton Gadbury. What was the impact of fascism and Nazism on the foreign policies of Italy and Germany? What were domestic and economic issues on the diplomacy of Italy and Germany? After World War I, France and Britain had promised to give Italy certain territories. Though it received some, others went toward forming Yugoslavia. This angered the Italian people. Along with this, the citizens were burdened with unemployment, rising taxes, declining trade, and political disunity. Combined with the fear of communism spread by the Bolshevik Revolution, regionalism which prevented the strong national identity, and political and economic inequality between the North and South, the conditions in Italy created the perfect opportunity for fascism and Benito Mussolini to rise to power. Looking at the graph, it's easy to see how economic despair could breed a desperate transition from a liberal to a fascist government. In 1921, Mussolini founded the Italian Nationalist Association. This later merged into the Fascist Party in 1923. It sought for Italy to become a great power with an empire that could compete with Britain, France, and Germany. All fascist governments have the same characteristics: nationalism, militarism, social Darwinism, anti-democratic authoritarianism. All of these influenced Italy's government under Mussolini. Fascism's impact on foreign policy. Mussolini once said, "My objective is simple. I want to make Italy great, respected, and feared." His main goal was to restore Italy to the height of the Roman Empire through war and imperialism. War revitalized society, and imperialism provided the resources to fund that society. He also believed that, contrary to the Versailles Treaty, Italy should be allowed a sphere of influence in the Mediterranean, not the British, who dominated it through naval power with their various bases. Great Britain and France also controlled the Suez Canal, which undermined Italy's power in the region. Italy's economic weaknesses led to military weaknesses. Its economy was dependent on France, Britain, and the United States, which prevented money from circulating within the country. Italy's lack of economic power led to opportunism. It looked to make money off political issues. For example, in 1923, Greece assassinated an Italian military officer, so Italy bombed the Greek island of Corfu. The League of Nations determined that Greece should pay an indemnity to Italy, which Italy accepted. Mussolini also sought to make Italy self-sufficient, which was difficult due to limited raw materials and the geographic location of the country. He aimed to support and finance companies through the state. Italian fascism rose before the Great Depression, and Italy's foreign links caused mass unemployment following the stock market crash of 1929. Mussolini pushed propaganda that endorsed Italian products and attracted foreign investors. Relations with foreign powers. Tension with France increased because Italy was jealous of French colonies, like French North Africa. Mussolini also wanted to replace French influence around the Balkans and gain territory in the Adriatic. However, he still tried to keep on good terms with Britain and France. The countries met in Rome in June of 1933 and signed the Four Power Pact. Mussolini's main goal was to weaken the powers of small states in the League of Nations through a bloc of large powers. Fascism's impact on the world. Fascists in Italy funded nationalists in Germany, supported independence movements in French Morocco, brutally repressed a revolt in 1922 for 1928 in Libya, which led to a war, and they created a treaty in Abyssinia, but invaded 6 years later. This all led to expansionism. Starting with the Second Italo-Ethiopian War, Italy started a colonial war which they fought from the 3rd of October 1935 until the 19th of February in 1937. Historians Franco Catalano and George Rochat argue that the invasion was an act of social imperialism because Mussolini needed a foreign war to distract public opinion from the economic downturn. American historian McGregor Knox argued that Mussolini launched the war for both domestic and foreign policy reasons. Mussolini wanted both an empire abroad because he wanted a foreign policy triumph to push the fascist system in a more radical direction despite opposition from the Crown, the Catholic Church, and others. Military intervention in the Spanish Civil War, 1936 to 1939. Mussolini looked for more military victory, which was inspired by Ethiopian success, and hoped to gain naval bases in the Balearic Islands after re-establishing the Mediterranean Roman Empire. He was motivated by fascist ideology and wanted to stop the spread of communism. The results were that it was popular with the church, but not popular with the public. There were high economic costs. 1/3 of the Italian arms stock was consumed. Italian forces were defeated by the international brigades at the Battle of Guadalajara. They increased Italo-German trade, and there was tension between Italy and France and Great Britain. However, at the end, Spain maintained independence.
After World War I in Germany, they felt very embarrassed after signing the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles limited their military to 100,000 men, and they experienced a lot of damage, which meant that they had to do severe war reparations. They had a poor economy, they had war-torn cities, and they had a loss of stability in their government. The Great Depression in 1929 caused further economic and political turmoil with their decrease in employment. Nazism is the social, political, and economic conditions in Germany that created the perfect climate for a person like Hitler to take over. Nazi is the short term for National Socialist German Workers' Party. Adolf Hitler joined this association in 1920 and rose in ranks due to speaking ability. Hitler used the platform to gain popularity, and he failed to overthrow the government in 1923, which led to his imprisonment for 9 months, and where he wrote his manifesto, Mein Kampf. And later, in 1923, he became chancellor, and then a year later after that, he became the dictator of Germany. The expansion of Nazism, Hitler's belief in Nazi party beliefs were founded in that the Treaty of Versailles should be overturned and that communism was dangerous. Germans, especially the Aryan people, who were the blonde hair and blue-eyed people, were the master race. The Jews and the Slavs and the Romas were the subhuman people that weren't on the same level, obviously, as Germans or Aryan people. And he also believed that Germans should unite under extreme nationalism, and they should have Lebensraum, which is living space, or more territory, so that they can live an amazing life with self-sufficiency. The expansion under Hitler included Czechoslovakia and Austria, where they gained land for mainly territory and economic reasons, and Austria's expansion, or the expansion of Germany throughout World War II, led to just more territory and more natural resources to be gained. German expansion, as seen in the graph, it was just Germany, and then it became German-occupied lands throughout the years. The changes in unemployment occurred after the Great Depression. So in 1933 actually, the working population decreased by 33%, which is around 6 million Germans. And that is when Hitler proposed the economic miracle, which would be the goal to have unemployment disappear by 1939. So by then, numbers of unemployment would drop from 6 million to 302,000 in 1939. The unemployment at that point was 5% of what it was in 1933. The people that were considered in the statistic for unemployment were basically just German men, women, Jews, and people that were not compliant with work were not considered in that statistic, and the people that weren't compliant with work would go to concentration camps and practically be enslaved. The economic failures of Germany would be included with the unemployment was diminishing, but propaganda made it seem better than it actually was. And 1939, Germany still imported a third of their required raw materials, when in actuality, or when theoretically, Hjalmar Schacht, the Minister of the Economy, wanted to reduce imports, eradicate unemployment, give government funding for many industries, and create trade agreements. If the factors for this economic miracle, however, were based on the wages of the people, then it would be worse under Hitler than it actually would have been in 1928. Hitler, knowing his economic crisis, the inevitability of his economic crisis, he put an end to devaluation to ensure that there would be no inflation, and he did not believe in tax cuts because that would decrease net revenue, and he knew he couldn't compete on the foreign market. The price of food went up 8%, but sources show that some foodstuff increased by 33%, or 150%, which made it much harder for people to purchase commodity food, and a lot of people had to return to staple foods. Hermann Göring was the plenipotentiary, which is someone with complete power over in his case, the 4-year plan. And the 4-year plan was a plan to reach self-sufficiency in Germany within 1936 to 1940. And in the 4-year plan, they tried to achieve complete rearmament, the reduce of unemployment, and creating public work projects. The natural resources within Germany were depleting, and so they had to take Austria and Czechoslovakia and the Rhineland so that they would achieve more territory and more natural resources that they couldn't gain in Germany. And so Anschluss occurred, the Sudetenland expansion occurred as well, and people needed these areas so that they can continue their population and also remilitarize in the case of the Rhineland. And the remilitarization was mainly for securing national borders and regional security. After the Treaty of Versailles, that left them with practically nothing, and then the focus on the agricultural economy back in Germany.